Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of AWSP TV. I am Roz Thompson, your Director of Government Relations, and I am thrilled to be joined today by Senator Lisa Wellman from the Mercer Island area, who is our Chair of the Early Learning and K-12 Education Committee in the Senate.
For 7 years now, going into my 8th year, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations on your re-election.
Thank you.
Happy that you'll be filling that role
Thank
again
you.
for
Me
the
too.
next 4 years. That's wonderful. I'm so thrilled to have Senator Wellman here today, not only to give us a little insight into what to expect in the upcoming legislative session, but she truly has a heart for the work that you do as principals and assistant principals. So I know you'll be spending some time talking about that. So, Senator, our legislative platform has 3 intersecting circles. One is talking about fully funding basic education. One is talking about the support students need. And one is talking about, how do we develop a really strong system for leadership development for our leaders in the state. So that's part of our platform. So that's a little bit of context for our members and for you. We also know the context is that our state is facing some, significant budget issues with revenues are increasing, but not at the rate that has been projected. And then increasing caseload numbers of people needing services from the state. So with all that context in mind, what can you share with us about any insights into the upcoming legislative session?
Well, we started very early on when realizing the challenges, financial challenges that we were going to be facing, to figure very, very targeted what is it that we were going to go after, because not a lot of new money. Okay. And so when I say new money, I don't mean that we weren't going to fill the buckets more than we had before, but in new things that would be bringing on new programs, new things that schools had to do. So there was kind of a structure that I was looking at. The 3 things that we decided, having looked at for a number of years, first of all was special education. I think what you'll see this session is that the cap is going to go off, and we are going to do some adjustment to bring more money into special education. I'm hoping that we will get our isolation and restraint bill and give some more peace and quiet and focus and concern on that area. Then there is, in general ed, getting the kids to and from school, to and from their skill centers, et cetera, transportation. Okay. And it's been challenging to fully fund, but we have a couple of bills in this area. One which actually my bill puts the money into transportation, as we've talked about, which includes the special segment of our foster kids, our McKinney-Vento homeless kids, and our special education kids that can't ride on the bus. And so we need to put more money into transportation. And then I know there'll be another bill coming that will allow school districts to choose alternative vehicles for some of the small populations. So you don't need to send that bus, 50 miles out to pick up some kids that a smaller vehicle could do. And so there'll be a bill on that. Hopefully we'll get that done. And then the third bucket, which is a big bucket, and we haven't looked at that I think in 7 years. I don't know when the last time anybody was looking at our operations costs, MSOC. And MSOC, for the most part, goes out on a per student basis. Well, many of our districts have seen declines in registrations, so that's down. And in addition, what's in that bucket is market driven. So if you're funding on the basis of a student, but inflation has kicked the price of heating, cooling, gas for the school bus, insurance, all of those things we've talked about, insurance 28% up, et cetera. So that bucket needs to be filled. And we have looked, because I need to have my armament. I need to have everything locked and loaded. And so I've gone out to at least a dozen different school districts and gotten their MSOC, their operations costs down. So we have good, credible, credible data about what it looks like. And it is, whether it's been a small school district, an urban, suburban, we've got them all covered. So those are going to be the major areas that we've gone over as far as funding is concerned. Trying to take some things off the table if we possibly can, and definitely not put new things on the table.
This is
I
great.
had an interesting discussion with a group of students at Lake Washington High School. 4 different groups presented me with bill opportunities. And one, which I hope if the students ever see this, they'll be very happy about. One was about EpiPens. And it was a very nice presentation. This is a real need. I understand this. And they started talking about every school should have, an EpiPen and whatever. And I'm thinking, we did menstrual products in
Yes.
every school. We did Narcan in every school. I said, guys, this is a really good idea, but not this year. But it got me to think, and I think this is the kind of thinking that we need to do. I started talking to a number of school principals and school directors, system directors, and they said, we're sitting with 25 pens, EpiPens, from various students.
Okay.
Not only that, but we have to get the doctor's prescriptions refilled, even though it's same EpiPen, but it needs to be, we need to have a current prescription.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, what if, and the principals agreed with me, what if we said you only had to do it every 2 years? So you didn't have that cost of somebody sitting there doing all of that work,
Right.
number one. And number two, what if in an emergency you had the right to use any pen you could get? It doesn't have to be the pen, that kid doesn't have a pen on file,
Yep.
but there's 15 pens sitting there.
Yes.
So
Right.
let's just use one of them and not have to worry about that. So I think we're going to see a bill that looks like that.
Modified slightly from the
Yes.
original idea.
So we
but
accomplish the
yeah.
same thing, making sure there's an EpiPen if somebody needs it,
Right. Right.
and maybe reducing a little of the overhead
Sure.
of clerical work.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's the kind of thinking I think we're trying to look at.
Good. Well, that's heartening to hear, that the kind of pause on policy of like, let's not do anything new
Right.
without funding it or reinventing a system or providing support or
Yes,
things like
yeah.
that. So that's lovely to hear. We're going to quote that, right? No. Wonderful.
You heard it here.
You heard it here first. That's great. Good. We also know, we don't have to go into too much detail, but we know the federal election put some things in play that some people are nervous about what may
Yes.
happen with Title I, Title II funding or things like that. Are there any plans in place at our legislature that may just be in response to
Well,
what's happening
one of the
federally?
things that I do want to talk about that you can definitely expect, because we're ready for it, you may remember that the Parents' Bill of Rights initiative came before us and we passed it. And we heard from a lot of schools and parents that LGBTQ plus kids were really upset about what they were seeing and hearing in that initiative. We passed it so that we could amend it. If it had passed by the public, and it's a very positive, Parents' Bill of Rights.
Sure.
You know what
They
I
have
did
a
with
lot-
Parents' Bill of
Yes,
Rights.
yes.
And
We've
we have
already-
that coming out every year,
Yep.
that new information. But we were worried that if it went the wrong way, it could go really south. And so we passed it, and the amendment was written at the same time that we passed it. And so first week of session, you will see that bill passed. What we have heard from youngsters across the state, across the country, LGBTQ trans kids, they're very worried. They've seen what's happened to women's health and issues, in reproductive health, and they worry about what might happen as far as they're concerned. And so we want to send a very clear message that in Washington State, we know that there are kids who are afraid.
Yeah.
We want to assure them that we're taking care of them, respecting them, and making sure that they can feel good about. That's one thing that they shouldn't have to worry about.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
important. Good. So you've got a clear focus on the budget, a great support for students and what their voices have been sharing with you.
Well, there's
That's-
that. I also, as in many cases, we've had quite a bit of, as you may know, on October 7th, there was a potential walkout across the state, and I have to say that I have never experienced anti-Semitism to the extent that I am seeing it now. And I think that we had a lot of youngsters who have, number one, felt very uncomfortable in elementary school, and a number of my constituents, as I now know, who left college because they just felt very uncomfortable on campus and feared for their lives. So there's a lot of things that we have to address and be aware of. I think just awareness is an important thing, to constantly be touching the waters, kind of not everything's fine, but what is coming up, and some of it is in reaction to news that you hear. Unfortunately, we hear more disinformation, and that really can muddy the waters and make things very challenging.
Right. I think when people are armed with information and through professional learning or whatever, the conversations, can go better and do go better.
Yes.
So continuing to get that information out and having those conversations is
and supporting having the conversations, being a place where somebody can say, I'm not feeling good about what's happening in school, and knowing that you'll be heard, and that it can be discussed, and if it's real, it's addressed, and if it's not real, just take it off the table.
Good. Well, I know that you're an incredible supporter of the work that principals and assistant principals do, and I know that's why you stopped by today and have offered to, do what you can as we go through the legislative session. So, for all of you out there, please let me know any messages I can pass on to Senator Wellman on your behalf. But I also know that you want to, share a message with all of them out there.
Well, that I tour much of the state practically every year and get a chance to really see the differences. And it's like communities. Not every community, thank goodness, is the same. They're very different. And to really understand what you see in the communities. I can tell you, though, when there is a great principal in that school, you can feel it, you can see it, it's reflected on the faces of the kids. It's such a part. The school is the hub of the community. It still is, and more so now than I think than ever. And so when you go through a school and you feel the presence of leadership, the presence of somebody who knows everybody, knows who does what, et cetera, but is also setting the stage of allowing all of those things to come forward for people to be comfortable in their own home. This is their home away from home, and it's really important. And one of the things we haven't talked about, but I do want to share with you, that I think we're spending a lot of time on the fact that we're seeing more students who need support in mental health and whatever. That's not necessarily because the students are having, a challenging time or have mental health issues. We have families in crisis across this state, families who are struggling financially, which is one of the worst, kinds of things that affect the family. And when kids go home and they don't have a comfortable place at home, the place that they seek comfort is really the school. May be the only place where they have an adult to talk to share their feelings with, et cetera. So I think that making sure that people have good jobs, have health care, enjoy what they're doing, are educated so that they are really doing a good job, because that's another, whole issue. I think that is one of the challenges we're facing in America today.
This is another budget question, but school meals. I mean, this has been a conversation when kids are well fed.
I know.
And they're, schools are where they're getting food.
Yes.
So I know we've made great steps, toward the 70%, I think now in our state get fed at school.
Yeah. We wish it could be. I don't see that's happening, but I have to tell you, when you look at, I was talking to a number of our kids move on and go into the armed services. Well, one of the reasons that many kids don't get to go into the armed services is because they're overweight. And I know I shouldn't talk about it, but but it is an issue. It is an issue. And I think that I've worked a lot in Japan, and in Japan, they don't allow processed food to be served to students. And so I think we're exacerbating our own problems with what we feed our kids. So not only do I want to see them fed, but I want to see them fed. Farm to table would be great.
Better. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good point. Well, there's so many issues I know we could discuss. There's potentially graduation requirement changes and restraint and isolation. I think you mentioned that. There are some rules being adjusted at OSPI, which is a significant impact to our members with seated lunch and discipline and things like that. So all of these, changes to policy impact the work that happens in our buildings.
Yes.
So there will be a lot to weigh in on to talk about.
Everybody out there should know that whenever we're discussing anything that relates to the school, I'm talking to this one every week, and making sure I'm talking to the teachers, the principals, every aspect of the school. So I'm getting the feedback, and whether you feel good about it, there's some issues. There are very few things that come out perfectly to the table, but we have amendments, so that's possible. we have a mechanism.
Exactly. Yeah, there's ways to make the bills the best they can.
Right.
So
right.
That's true. Yeah.
But I really do. One of the reasons that I had said to Roz that I would be happy to come and talk to you on behalf of the principals is because, as I said, the leadership role that's played in the school is such a vital role to the success of every single person in that building. You can see it, you can feel it, and it's one of the toughest jobs out there. I really am very sensitive to the fact that, this person, whoever it is standing in the middle of every bit, of what's happening. And I'm very appreciative of all of you out there doing that job.
Well, we're appreciative of your support and you paying attention to all the issues and keeping us in mind as we navigate all of that we have to navigate in K-12. So
thank you.
Thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
stopping by, and we'll see you soon up on the hill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
thank you.
All right, take care. Bye, everybody.